Far away from the heart of the galaxy, where stars were few and space was mostly empty, a small patrol ship floated quietly. The crew was bored, their mission simple: watch the borders of known space and report any unusual signals. Life out here was slow, peaceful, and sometimes lonely. Suddenly, the ship's communication system crackled. A weak signal came through. It was a distress call, an SOS, but this was no ordinary call for help. The message was broken, full of static, and barely understandable. Deathworlders, help, enemy overwhelming, planet lost, send fleet. The words repeated over and over, mixed with noises and interference. The crew looked at each other in shock. Deathworlders? They had heard stories about these warriors. They were famous or maybe infamous across the galaxy. Deathworlders came from planets so harsh and dangerous that only the strongest could live there. They were tough, fearless, and skilled fighters. The captain of the patrol ship sent the signal immediately to the Galactic Council. This was serious. The SOS was coming from a planet not even marked on any official map, a wild world that no one knew much about. The Galactic Council was a group of leaders from many planets. They met in a grand hall filled with screens and data. When the distress call arrived, the council members debated what to do. "Why should we risk sending ships? That world could be a trap," one leader said. "Deathworlders are known to help only when it suits them." Another council member argued, "If the call is real, lives are at risk. We have a duty to respond." But there was fear too. The Deathworlders did not usually answer calls for help from strangers. They were warriors, not diplomats. They preferred action over talk and strength over negotiation. After hours of discussion, the decision was made. The Deathworlders would be sent to investigate. If they agreed to respond, they would do it on their own terms. The council hoped their reputation for brutal efficiency would be enough to turn the tide. On the Deathworlders' homeworld, deep in their command center, Admiral Varric stood watching the reports. The signal was faint but clear. His face was hard and serious. He was a legend among his people, strong, smart, and merciless. "Send reconnaissance ships," Varric ordered. "Find out what's happening. But no promises. We do not save others because they ask. We save them if it is our way." His officers nodded, understanding the harsh truth. The Deathworlders did not rush to help. They struck when it suited their interests. But something about this call was different. The desperation, in the message, the unknown enemy. It was a challenge worthy of their attention. The ships prepared for launch. They were unlike any other fleet in the galaxy. Heavy armor, powerful weapons, and crews trained to survive the worst conditions. The Deathworlders were ready for war. On board the lead ship, the crew felt the weight of the mission. They were going to a planet that might kill them all. Yet they were proud. To be a Deathworlder meant to face death and still fight harder. They lived for this. As they left the safety of their world and entered the dark void, the fleet moved silently. No one spoke much. Each soldier checked their gear, ran drills, and prepared mentally. The story of the Deathworlders was not just about battle. It was about survival against impossible odds. Their worlds were called Deathworlds because nature itself was deadly. Poisonous air, giant predators, deadly storms. If they could live there, they could live anywhere. The fleet passed through asteroid fields, dodged cosmic storms, and crossed dangerous space. The signal grew stronger as they approached the source. Finally, the planet appeared. It was rough and wild, covered in dark forests and raging rivers. Smoke rose from broken cities. The surface was scarred, as if a great battle had been fought. The Deathworlders prepared to land. Their mission was clear: find the source of the SOS, discover the enemy, and decide whether to fight or leave. The first team stepped onto the surface. The air was thick and bitter. The ground shook under their boots. Strange sounds echoed in the distance. The team moved carefully, scanning for threats. They found signs of struggle: burned villages, broken machines, and scattered bodies. Then, they saw the survivors, small, weak aliens hiding in caves. They told their story, A powerful enemy had come from deep space, attacking without mercy. The colony was nearly destroyed. Their only hope was the Deathworlders. Admiral Varric listened quietly. He felt a rare stir inside, a mix of respect and duty. The enemy was strong, but the Deathworlders were stronger. He sent a message back to the fleet. Prepare for war. The fight is coming. Far above, the ships gathered, ready to unleash the full power of humanity's fiercest warriors. The galaxy would soon know that when the Deathworlders respond to an SOS, it was never just help. They brought a storm. Admiral Varric stood at the bridge of the flagship, the Iron Talon, watching the stars slide past through the thick armored glass. Around him, the hum of machinery filled the air, and the steady beep of sensors tracked every object in space. The fleet was gathering. More ships, more soldiers, more weapons. Everything ready for what might become a fierce battle. The distress signal had led them to a dangerous place. Now, they had to be prepared. The Deathworlders never fought lightly, but when they did, it was always with full force. In the main hall of the flagship, officers moved quickly, giving orders and organizing teams. Soldiers checked their armor and weapons, practiced drills, and went over mission plans again and again. There was no room for mistakes. Lieutenant Mara, a fierce and skilled Deathworlder warrior, prepared her squad. Her face was calm but serious. She knew what was waiting for them on the planet below. The enemy was unknown but powerful. It would be a test of everything they had learned on their harsh homeworlds. Remember, she told her team, we do not save because we feel sorry. We save because we are strong, and we are Deathworlders. Her squad nodded. For them, these words were more than a motto. It was a way of life. They had survived storms that crushed mountains, beasts that could swallow men whole, and enemies who fought with terrible cruelty. They were ready. Meanwhile, on the command deck, Admiral Varric met with his top advisors. Data streamed on holographic screens showing the destroyed settlements and the strange biology of the enemy forces. It was clear this was not a normal fight. The enemy adapted quickly to the planet's dangers, using the poison air and deadly wildlife as weapons. We must use the planet against them, Varric said firmly. Our strength is survival. We will turn their own ground into a trap. One advisor nodded. We have modified suits and weapons that can resist the toxins and storms. We can strike where the enemy feels safe. Varric allowed a rare smile. Good. We do not just fight for victory. We fight to prove that humanity cannot be broken. Back in the hangar bay, sleek dropships and heavy assault vehicles waited. The soldiers loaded into them quietly, checking gear one last time. The fleet was not just a group of ships. It was a moving fortress prepared to bring the full power of Deathworlder might to the planet's surface. Outside, the rest of the fleet gathered. Fighters zipped through space, ready to intercept any threat. Massive cruisers stood like giant beasts, their weapons charged and waiting. As the fleet moved closer to the planet, tension filled the air. Everyone knew this was more than a rescue mission. This was a challenge, a call to show why Deathworlders were feared and respected across the stars. Lieutenant Mara's squad was among the first to land. Their dropship pierced the thick clouds, engines roaring. The ground was a mix of broken rock and dark forests. Toxic fumes rose in thin waves. The squad moved swiftly, scanning the area. The enemy could be anywhere, hiding in the shadows or beneath the earth. Mara's heart beat steady. Fear was a weakness. Focus was strength. Suddenly, a series of alarms sounded. Enemy creatures, twisted and quick, sprang from the shadows. Their bodies glowed with strange colors, and their movements were sharp and deadly. The squad reacted instantly. Weapons fired bursts of plasma and energy. The air lit up with flashes as the creatures fell one by one. But more kept coming. Mara shouted commands, leading her team in tight formation. They used the terrain to their advantage, forcing the creatures into narrow passes where they could be trapped. After several intense minutes, the enemy retreated into the forest. The squad breathed hard but held their ground. This was only the beginning. Meanwhile, the fleet in orbit prepared for a larger strike. Bombers and artillery units were loaded with specialized weapons designed to target enemy strongholds hidden beneath the surface. Admiral Varek watched the battle reports come. And the enemy was tough, but their attacks were reckless. That was a mistake. "We will crush them," Varek said quietly. "But we must be patient and smart." Hours passed as the battle on the surface grew more intense. The enemy tried to use the planet's dangerous nature as a shield, but the Deathworlders adapted quickly. Their suits filtered the poisonous air, their weapons were resistant to corrosion, and their combat training made them ready for anything. On board the Iron Talon, the communications officer reported new data. "We have intercepted enemy transmissions. They are coordinating attacks and calling for reinforcements." Varek's eyes narrowed. "Then we end this quickly. No chance for them to grow stronger." Orders went out for a full assault. Heavy weapons fired from orbit, shaking the ground. On the surface, squads moved forward, pushing the enemy back. Despite the danger, the soldiers felt a growing confidence. The Deathworlders were survivors, born in places where only the strongest lived. This planet was tough, but so were they. "Lieutenant." Mara paused for a moment, looking at the horizon where strange fires burned. She thought of her homeworld, of the endless storms and harsh creatures she had faced. This fight was different, but the same rules applied. Fight hard, never give up. The night fell, but the battle did not stop. The enemy launched surprise attacks, hiding in the darkness, trying to wear down the Deathworlders. But every time they came, they found a wall of steel and determination. In the command center, Varek prepared his final strategy. He would lead the fleet personally in the next wave of attacks. It was time to show the enemy the true meaning of Deathworlders respond. The fleet was inbound, ready to bring the storm. The galaxy watched, waiting to see if humanity's fiercest warriors would save the day or become another lost story in the dark reaches of space. But Varek knew one thing for sure: when Deathworlders fight, they do not back down. The fleet circled the dark, wild planet. Thick clouds twisted like smoke across the surface, hiding dangers beneath. From orbit, the Deathworlders saw scars of battle: burned forests, shattered cities, and deep craters carved into the land. This was no peaceful rescue. This was a war zone. Admiral Varek stood on the bridge of the Iron Talon, eyes sharp as the screens showed the planet's surface in detail. "Prepare the ground teams," he ordered. "We land at the nearest colony. Find the survivors and find the enemy." Outside, the atmosphere was thick and bitter. The planet's air was dangerous, poisonous gases mixed with heavy dust storms. It was a death world, just like the ones where the Deathworlders were born and trained. But even for them, this place was unforgiving. The first dropships roared through, the clouds cutting through fierce winds as they approached the surface. On board, soldiers gripped their weapons tightly, their suits filtering the toxic air. They knew they had to move fast. Every second counted. Lieutenant Mara led her squad down to the landing zone. The ground shook beneath them as powerful storms rolled over the landscape. Trees cracked and bent in the wind. Strange, glowing insects flew past, their sharp wings humming like tiny blades. The colony was in ruins. Buildings lay broken and burned. Smoke rose from fires still smoldering. The few survivors, weak and frightened, gathered in small groups. Their faces told stories of horror and loss. Mara knelt beside one of the survivors, a small alien with bright eyes and trembling hands. "Who did this?" she asked quietly. "The shadows," the alien whispered. "They came from deep space. They hunt us. They use the planet's poison to kill." Mara's heart tightened. The shadows were unknown to the Galactic Council, but their fear was real. They had to be stopped. The squad moved carefully through the ruins. Sensors beeped with warnings. Strange creatures lurked just beyond sight, mutated by the planet's harsh conditions and the enemy's strange technology. They attacked quickly and disappeared just as fast. Mara's team fought back, using their training and powerful weapons. Each battle was a test of strength and will. The enemy was fast and clever, but the Deathworlders were stronger. As they pushed deeper into the colony, the survivors told more stories. The shadows had no mercy. They poisoned the air and water. making life impossible. They hunted the weak and destroyed anyone who resisted. Mara knew the situation was worse than they thought. This was not just a battle for survival. It was a fight for the future of the planet. Back in orbit, the fleet prepared for a full assault. Bombers and artillery ships waited for the command to strike. Their weapons were designed to destroy enemy strongholds hidden deep underground. Admiral Varric studied the enemy's movements on his screens. "They hide in the caves and tunnels beneath the planet," he said. "We will flush them out." He ordered orbital bombardments to begin. Powerful explosions shook the surface, lighting up the dark forests. The enemy fired back with energy, weapons that burned through shields and armor. On the ground, the Deathworlders advanced. Their suits protected them from poison and flame. They moved with precision, cutting off enemy escape routes and securing key positions. Mara's squad found a hidden entrance to the enemy's tunnels. It was dark and narrow, smelling of sulfur and death. The air was thick with danger, but they had no choice. They entered slowly, weapons ready. Inside the tunnels, the enemy waited. Strange machines hummed and pulsed with energy. The shadows fought fiercely, using the planet's poisonous gases as weapons. The battle was brutal. The Deathworlders pushed forward, relying on their training and teamwork. They fought in darkness and poison, never giving up. At one point, Mara faced a powerful enemy warrior alone. Their weapons clashed, sparks flying. But Mara's strength and skill won out. She struck the final blow and pressed onward. After hours of fighting, the tunnels were mostly cleared. The shadows were retreating, broken but not defeated. Mara sent a message back to the fleet. "We have the enemy on the run, but they are dangerous. More forces could arrive at any moment." Admiral Varric listened and nodded. "Then we prepare for what comes next." The Deathworlders had come to this death world to answer a call for help. Now, they were the last line of defense. As night fell on the planet's surface, the strange storms continued to rage. The survivors looked to the Deathworlders with hope for the first time in weeks. The fight was far from over, but the arrival of humanity's fiercest warriors had changed everything. The sky above the battered planet roared with the fury of storms. Lightning cracked across the thick clouds, casting eerie light over the broken landscape below. But the Deathworlders moved like shadows through the chaos, steady and unyielding. Admiral Varric stood on the bridge of the Iron Talon, eyes glued to the tactical displays. The enemy was retreating into the deep forests and underground tunnels, but they were not defeated yet. The shadows had become desperate and dangerous. "We cannot let them regroup," Varric said, voice low but firm. "We must strike now, and we must use the planet against them." Lieutenant Mara and her squad gathered in the command center. They were tired, battle-worn, but their eyes burned with determination. Mara spoke clearly. "We have learned a lot about the enemy. They use the planet's poison and storms as weapons, but we have adapted. Our suits and weapons resist the toxins. Now it's time to turn the planet into our weapon." The Deathworlders' technology was advanced, but it was their survival skills that made the difference. They were experts in living on harsh planets, and they knew how to use every danger to their advantage. Varric nodded. "Prepare the squads for a coordinated strike. We will use traps, ambushes, and the planet's storms to crush the enemy." Outside, the fleet launched drones into the thick forests. These small, fast machines scouted ahead, sending back real-time data. The Deathworlders planned their attack with precision. Mara's squad led the ground assault. Moving quietly, they laid mines and traps in narrow passes, forcing the shadows into kill zones. When the enemy attacked, they were met with deadly force. The battle was intense. Energy blasts lit up the dark woods. The air was thick with smoke, dust, and the harsh cries of combat. But the Deathworlders did not falter. They used the environment, poisonous plants, jagged rocks, and raging rivers to corner and destroy their foes. One squad set a trap near a sulfurous swamp. When the enemy charged, they triggered a blast that sent toxic gas flowing into the enemy ranks. The shadows screamed and fell, caught in their own weapon. Mara moved through the battlefield like a ghost. Her team was small but deadly, striking quickly and retreating before the enemy could respond. She sent clear commands and kept her squad focused on their goal: end the fight fast. The enemy was clever, using camouflage and speed to evade attacks. But the Deathworlders' training and equipment gave them the edge. Their suits filtered poison and enhanced strength. Their weapons could pierce the toughest armor. Meanwhile, in orbit, the fleet prepared to bombard enemy hideouts. The Iron Talon and its sister ships launched missiles and energy beams with pinpoint accuracy. The ground shook as explosions ripped through enemy tunnels. Admiral Varric watched the destruction with cold satisfaction. "Let them hide. We will find them," he said. On the ground, Mara's squad discovered enemy supply caches filled with strange weapons and devices. They studied the technology carefully. It was clear the Shadows had adapted quickly, using stolen technology from other worlds. Mara sent the data back to the fleet. They are dangerous, but they are not invincible. The battle continued for hours. The Deathworlders worked like a machine, coordinated, efficient, and unstoppable. They were not just fighting for survival. They were reclaiming the planet. But the enemy was not finished. Late in the day, the Shadows launched a surprise counterattack. From hidden tunnels, they struck Mara's squad with ferocious energy blasts. The squad was pushed back, and Mara felt the sting of a near miss. She ordered a retreat to regroup. They pulled back through the thick forests, the enemy in pursuit. Back at the command center, Varric heard the news. "Hold the line," he commanded. "Reinforcements are coming." From orbit, new ships entered the battle. Heavy assault walkers dropped from the sky, stomping into the battlefield. Their powerful weapons tore through enemy ranks, turning the tide. Mara's squad rejoined the fight, inspired by the arrival of fresh forces. They pushed forward with renewed strength. In the heart of the battle, Mara faced an enemy commander, tall, fierce, and deadly. They fought fiercely, their weapons clashing in sparks and flashes. Mara's training and grit won out, and she defeated the commander, breaking the enemy's spirit. With their leader fallen and their forces scattered, the Shadows began to retreat into the deepest parts of the planet. The Deathworlders had won this battle, but the war was not over. Admiral Varric sent a clear message to the fleet. "We have the tactical edge. Prepare for the final assault." As night fell, the storms raged on, but the Deathworlders stood strong, ready for whatever came next. The planet was theirs to claim, not by mercy, but by power and will. The night on the Deathworld was darker than usual. Thick clouds covered the sky and heavy storms raged with fierce winds and thunder. But on the ground, the Deathworlders were restless. They had pushed the enemy back, but the battle was far. From over, Admiral Varric stood on the bridge of the Iron Talon, watching the last reports from the field. The enemy, known as the Shadows, had retreated deep underground. But intelligence showed something more worrying. A new weapon the Shadows had been building in secret. A weapon powerful enough to destroy the Deathworlder fleet. Varric's eyes narrowed. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "We cannot wait for them to strike first. We must act now." He called a meeting with his top officers. Your room was tense. Everyone knew what was at stake. Lieutenant Mara spoke up. "Our forces are strong, but this weapon could wipe us out. We must find it and destroy it before it can be used." Varric nodded. "Agreed. This mission is no longer just about rescue or battle. It is about survival." The fleet prepared for a new operation, one that would take them deep into the planet's most dangerous regions. The enemy's weapon was hidden in a massive underground complex, protected by traps and enemy soldiers. The Deathworlders studied maps and sensor data carefully. They planned their attack with precision. It would be risky, but they had no choice. On the ground, Mara's squad prepared to lead the assault. Their weapons were checked, their suits sealed tight against poison and dust. They knew the dangers, but they also knew the importance of their mission. As the dropships descended into the dark valleys, the soldiers felt a quiet tension. The air was thick with danger, and the ground trembled beneath them. When they landed, the team moved quickly. The tunnels ahead were narrow and filled with the hum of enemy machines. The air smelled of oil and sulfur. The Deathworlders advanced carefully, watching for traps. The Shadows had prepared well, using the planet's natural hazards and technology to defend their weapon. Suddenly, an alarm blared. The enemy had detected them. Battle erupted inside the tunnels. Energy blasts flashed in the dark, and the sound of fighting echoed off stone walls. Mara led her team with calm focus. They fought back fiercely, using every skill they had learned on the Deathworlds. The enemy was strong, but the Deathworlders were stronger. As they pushed deeper, they discovered the weapon, a massive device glowing with strange energy. It pulsed like a heartbeat ready to unleash destruction. Mara sent the coordinates to the fleet. "We found it. Prepare to destroy on my mark." But before they could act, the enemy launched a desperate counterattack. A huge wave of soldiers and machines came rushing toward them. The fighting grew even more intense. Mara's squad held the line, but they were outnumbered. The enemy wanted to protect their weapon at all costs. In the chaos, Mara spotted a control panel on the weapon. She knew if she could disable it, the weapon would be useless. With quick thinking, she ordered a small team to cover her as she moved toward the panel. Bullets and energy blasts flew past, but Mara reached the control panel. Her fingers worked quickly, hacking into the system. The weapon began to power down. The enemy's hope faded. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the tunnels. The enemy had triggered a self-destruct sequence. Mara shouted into her comm, "Retreat! Get out now!" The Deathworlders ran through collapsing tunnels, dodging falling rocks and fire. The air was thick with smoke and dust. Outside, the fleet launched a full bombardment. Explosions shook the ground, destroying enemy forces trying to escape. Back on the Iron Talon, Admiral Varric watched the battle unfold. "They made it," he said quietly. "Now we finish this." With the enemy's weapon destroyed and their forces broken, the Shadows began to retreat for good. The Deathworlders pressed their advantage, hunting down the last survivors. Mara and her squad returned to the surface, exhausted but victorious. The planet was still dangerous, but the enemy's grip was broken. The survivors of the colony looked on with hope. For the first time in weeks, they believed they might be free. Admiral Varric sent a final message across the galaxy. "When Deathworlders respond to a call for help, we do not come alone. We come with strength, with skill, and with the will to survive. The galaxy should remember this day." The fleet prepared to leave the planet behind, their mission complete. But somewhere in the dark reaches of space, new threats were already forming. The war was not over. The dark planet lay quiet beneath thick, swirling clouds. The storms had calmed, the fires were dying, and the Shadows' threat was broken. But the work was not done. Above, the Deathworlder fleet waited in orbit. Massive warships floated like steel giants, their weapons still ready. The soldiers on the ground were weary but alert. They knew that peace on a Deathworld was never certain. Admiral Varric stood on the bridge of the Iron Talon, looking out at the planet below. His sharp eyes scanned the stars beyond. The mission had been a success, but his mind was already on what came next. A message crackled through the ship's communications system. It was from the Galactic Council. "Admiral Varric," the voice said, "the galaxy watches your actions. Your response to the SOS has changed the balance of power. Many worlds now seek your protection and your strength." Varric's face remained calm. "The Deathworlders respond only when the fight is just. We do not offer protection freely. We offer strength and survival." The Council's voice was respectful but cautious. "Your fleet is growing. Some fear what that means." Varric smiled. "Let them fear. When Deathworlders respond, a fleet is always inbound. We are the shield and the sword of humanity." Below, Lieutenant Mara and her squad helped the survivors rebuild. The small colony, once broken and scared, was starting to heal. People worked together, clearing debris and planting new life in the poisoned soil. Mara looked at the faces around her, alien, human, and other species alike. They were united by hope in the presence of the Deathworlders. For many, this was the first time they had seen true strength standing with them. But Mara knew their fight was far from over. The shadows had been only the beginning. Other enemies lurked in the darkness of space, waiting for their chance. The Deathworlders were ready. Back on the Iron Talon, Varric addressed his fleet. "Listen well," he said, voice strong and clear. "We have answered a call for help and proved our power. But our duty is greater than one planet or one fight. We are the guardians of survival. Wherever there is danger, wherever there is weakness, the Deathworlders will come. Our fleet is inbound." The ships responded with a low rumble, a sound like thunder rolling through the stars. As the fleet prepared to leave orbit, new ships arrived. Alliances formed in the wake of their victory. Other worlds sent their own vessels, inspired by the strength and determination of the Deathworlders. The galaxy was changing. In the darkness beyond, unknown enemies watched. They saw the power gathering and knew the coming storm. But humanity's fiercest warriors did not fear. They thrived in the storm. As the Iron Talon and its fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading toward new threats and new challenges, one thing was clear. When Deathworlders respond to a call for help, they come with everything they have: a single ship, a small squad, or a whole unstoppable fleet. Because for the Deathworlders, there was no other way. The galaxy had witnessed the power of humanity's fiercest defenders, and the fleet was always inbound.